You're watching Bounce TV News at 7.
Good evening, I'm Rockman Johnson, and you're inside the news on Bounce. Tonight, Marissa Alexander is now getting a brand new trial. Now, you may remember she was sentenced to 20 years for firing warning shots in the air to scare off her abusive husband. Now, what we know so far is that this Florida woman says that she and her husband were estranged at the time. And during that argument, the judge has said now that she will, or during the initial trial, she was not able to invoke the stand your ground defense. Right now, what we understand is the First District Court of Appeals have ruled that even in the new trial, she still would not be able to use that stand your ground defense. The ruling was written by Judge Robert Benton, and he said the instructions contained or constituted a fundamental error. They required Alexander to prove self-defense beyond a reasonable doubt. And standing by with us on Skype, this is Kwame Thompson in Atlanta. Kwame, how are you? Kwame, are you with us?
Thank you.
Hey, thank you. There you go. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I know I've talked to you before about this trial. It's riveting. Marissa Alexander is going to be back in court to plead her case. How does it look for her?
I think that things are looking pretty good from this point on, but what we have here, I want to look at a little of the procedural history. The court has called this a fundamental error, and the prosecuting attorney has called it a technical error. But what we have here is an injustice to this woman who should have been afforded the stand your ground rule from the beginning. And the trial court judge who said that the stand your ground defense didn't apply is the one who allowed this erroneous jury instruction, and then comes back and states that, that the stand your ground defense, wasn't applicable in the first place.
Now, I talked to Congresswoman Corrine Brown, who is one of the most outspoken opponents of Angela Cory, who is the state attorney. Congresswoman Brown says she's not even sure, though. I mean, her office is trying to wrap their arms around it. They're just hearing, but things I'm seeing on social media, as well as the NAACP, said they're not sure that this case is going to turn out any different. Is this something you think the Justice Department may have to get involved in?
Well, I think that the case is going to really turn out fundamentally different because, as you are aware, the jury were given instructions, and it was a jury of 6 people to prove that this defendant was proved that she acted in self-defense beyond a reasonable doubt. And everyone knows that that's erroneous. The prosecution has to prove that she acted beyond a reasonable doubt in violation of the aggravated assault laws.
Kwame, let me ask you this. I know our time is coming to an end, but yes. One of the things I found so interesting in the report during the deposition, her estranged husband or ex-husband at the time said, and I quote, "I have 5 baby mamas and I put my hands on all of them except one." That's what he said. Then he turned around on the stand and said something completely different and said, "I was in fear for my life. I was standing there. She had the gun," and he completely changed his story. But no one in the state attorney's office went after him for perjury. Is that something you think could come back up since he did not tell the truth in one way or the other, because he said both things under oath?
Well, he may have immunity because we don't know what type of deal that he worked out there, but this is further proof that Marissa Alexander was the one who was the victim, and this case should have never been prosecuted from the get-go, from the beginning.
Kwame, we'll be following this case closely. Thank you so much for joining in with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Again, Kwame Thompson, an attorney out of Atlanta, and one of the things that we are looking at in this case is to see when it returns to trial. We'll be following it closely, and you can follow it as well on the website, bouncenews.tv. Now, in Florida and another city, there are guns that are being offered to Florida residents for free. With all the recent shootings and talk about shootings around the country, a group feels that one way to keep that to the side is arming citizens. Stephanie Culp has the latest on residents' reaction in the Orlando area.
This is the flyer that was passed out throughout this neighborhood. I actually peeled this one off of the front porch of a woman's home. She didn't even know it was there. A lot of other people say they threw theirs out without even reading it. But after getting a good look at it, the reviews are mixed. Some neighbors think this is a good idea. Some say it's bad.
No, I would not need to have a shotgun. No.
Robin McLaughlin has lived in her neighborhood for 25 years and never felt the need for a gun.
I mean, everybody has the right to bear arms, but That doesn't mean, that we should all have a firearm for our own protection.
But one group is looking to arm Robin's neighbors. Volunteers with the Armed Citizen Project went door to door this weekend in Orlando's Sunshine Gardens neighborhood with these flyers advertising free shotguns.
Yes, this is perfectly legal because what we're doing is we're offering, first of all, a certified gun instruction class, but we're not handing out the shotguns whatsoever. These guns have to be transferred through an FFL dealer. So that goes through a background check and everything else.
Ron Ritter is the program director for the state of Florida. He says the group works with gun manufacturers and dealers to get free shotguns or discounted shotguns that are then passed on to the homeowner.
It's been overwhelming. People love it in Florida. We have groups that have joined up with us from Southern Florida, Orlando, Tampa, Sarasota, everywhere that are now, jumping along board with this.
Arming everybody with a shotgun, I don't think that's a very good idea. Tempers flare. The least little problem is going to be neighbor against neighbor.
Now, the Sunshine Gardens neighborhood is just 25 miles south of Sanford. Sanford was thrust into the spotlight last year after the death of Trayvon Martin, who was shot to death by Neighborhood Watch volunteer George Zimmerman. And speaking of George Zimmerman, his wife, who he's in divorce court with right now, Shelley Zimmerman, said she doubts her husband's innocence. George Zimmerman was acquitted of killing Trayvon Martin. Shelley sat down for an interview just weeks after a domestic dispute with her estranged husband. Now, what we know is that Shelley Zimmerman is saying that her husband, in looking at, she said she stood by him during this time of trial, and she spoke out on the NBC's Today Show, and she says she didn't see a gun, but she says, I know my husband. I saw him in a stance and a look in his eyes that I've never seen before. He was putting his hand in his shirt and saying, please, and took steps closer. So logically, I assumed that he had a gun. Now, what we're saying, too, is we hear his wife said one of the things Zimmerman allegedly smashed her iPad during the domestic violence incident. And although she declined to press charges, police say that he could still be prosecuted once the video is recovered from the device. Now, the Trayvon Martin case also left Shelley with legal troubles. She pled guilty to lying to a judge about the family's finances during a hearing before the trial. We'll have more on that story on our website, bouncenews.tv, as it continues. Back in a moment. It's a $168,000 bottle of wine, and it's for sale. We've got that and Say It posted. But first, jury deliberations have started in the trial of Michael Jackson's family against AEG Live. Now, the family says that if not for AEG, Michael Jackson would still be here today. But AEG says not so fast. They only hired the guy that MJ requested.
They chose to run the risk to make a huge profit, and they lost, and they are responsible.
Now, it's a multi-billion-dollar verdict that could mean the end for AEG. You've got to look at all 83 days of the trial right now on bouncenews.tv. Come on, read with me.